The first thing my brother did after our parents' funeral was change the locks. Not call me, not ask how I was holding up, not even wait until the flowers on our mother's grave had settled into the dirt. He just locked me out of the house where I grew up. I remember standing on the front porch at 7:30 at night in my nursing scrubs holding a grocery bag full of soup and medicine I no longer needed to buy. My key wouldn't turn. At first I thought maybe I was too exhausted to do it properly. Grief makes simple things feel confusing. I tried again, nothing. Then I noticed the deadbolt. New, silver, cold. My stomach dropped instantly. And when I turned toward the garage, I saw my entire life packed into soaked cardboard boxes beside the driveway. My clothes, my nursing textbooks, my mother's recipe binder, photographs, everything. Rainwater dripped through the corners of the boxes while the porch light glowed warmly behind the windows like the house itself had already forgotten me. Then the front door opened. My brother Grant stepped outside, adjusting the cuffs of an expensive charcoal coat like this was some normal Tuesday evening conversation. Behind him stood his wife Vanessa holding a glass of wine, smiling. "You're home earlier than expected," Grant said casually. I couldn't even process the sentence. "Why doesn't my key work?" He slid both hands into his pockets calmly. "Because I changed the locks." The words hit harder than I expected, not because they surprised me, because somewhere deep down I think I already knew he was capable of this. "Grant," my voice cracked embarrassingly. "We buried Mom 3 days ago, and Dad made his wishes clear years ago." There it was. The same sentence my father repeated my entire childhood. Sons build legacy, daughters leave it behind. Grant walked down the porch steps slowly toward me. "The house belongs to me now, Brielle." Brielle, not even my full name anymore, just the shortened version he used whenever he wanted to sound dismissive. "We haven't even read the will yet." "The will is a formality." Vanessa laughed softly behind him. That laugh stayed with me for weeks afterward. Sharp, thin, cruel. Grant gestured toward the boxes. "You've got until tomorrow night to move your stuff." I stared at him in disbelief. "I lived here for 2 years taking care of Mom while you visited 3 times. His expression hardened immediately. "That was your choice." Choice. Interesting word for sacrificing your life to care for dying parents. "I gave up my apartment." "You chose that too." Rain soaked through one of the boxes, suddenly collapsing the bottom open. My nursing school diploma slid halfway into a puddle. Vanessa watched it happen without reacting at all, like she was watching garbage spill from a trash bag. "You can't do this." Grant sighed impatiently. "Brielle, you're 32 years old. At some point you need to stop acting like a dependent child." Dependent, I almost laughed. Because during the 2 years our mother battled cancer, I paid for half the groceries, half the utilities. Her medications when insurance delayed reimbursements. Meanwhile, Grant lived in a 6-bedroom house 30 minutes away and sent flowers twice. But people like my brother don't remember sacrifice unless it belongs to them. "I took care of Mom every day, and now she's gone." The sentence landed brutally between us. Even Vanessa looked uncomfortable for half a second. Then Grant straightened slightly. "Dad intended for me to inherit everything. Sons carry the family forward. That's how this family works." I looked past him through the front window into the living room. Mom's blanket still rested over the armchair where she spent chemotherapy nights watching old cooking shows with me. Her reading glasses still sat beside the lamp. The lavender candle she loved still burned faintly near the bookshelf. Everything about the house still smelled like her. And suddenly, I couldn't breathe. Before I tell you what happened at the will reading, and why my brother nearly collapsed in front of the lawyer after discovering what our mother secretly did 8 years earlier, take a second to like and subscribe if you enjoy emotional family drama stories like this. And tell me honestly in the comments, would you ever forgive family for throwing you out right after a funeral? My name is Brielle Mercer, and for most of my life, I was raised to believe daughters were temporary guests in their own homes. My father never called himself sexist. Men like him rarely do. Instead, they hide behind words like tradition, responsibility, legacy, as if favoritism becomes respectable when you wrap it in family values. Growing up in the Mercer house meant understanding one thing very early. Grant mattered more, not loudly, not cruelly, just consistently. He got attention. I got expectations. When Grant turned 16, Dad bought him a black Mustang and spent weekends teaching him how to maintain it in the garage. When I turned 16, Mom gave me a used bicycle and told me not to feel bad because your father just connects more with boys. Connects more with boys. Interesting how women are taught to translate rejection into something softer. Grant was 6 years older than me and absorbed Dad's worldview like oxygen. By 25, he already acted like the future owner of everything our parents had ever built. The house, Dad's contracting business, the lake property in Vermont, even family decisions somehow revolved around him. And honestly, nobody challenged it, not even Mom, at least not openly. But now looking back, I think she fought quietly in ways none of us understood yet. I remember one night during nursing school after Dad spent an entire dinner bragging about Grant's latest investment property while barely acknowledging my scholarship award. Mom followed me into the kitchen afterward while I washed dishes. "You know I'm proud of you, right?" she whispered softly. I smiled weakly. "It's okay." "No," she said immediately, "it isn't." That surprised me. Because Mom almost never contradicted Dad directly, she touched my hand gently. "One day you'll understand why some women prepare silently." At the time, I had no idea what she meant. I thought it was just one of those mysterious mother sentences that only make sense years later. Turns out that's exactly what it was. 2 years ago, Mom was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer. I was working a double shift at Brookside Senior Care when Dad called me unexpectedly. He almost never called. "Your mother's sick," he said flatly, no greeting, no softness. "You need to come home." Not "we need help," not "can you help us," just "you need to come home," like caregiving had always been assigned to me automatically. And honestly, maybe it had. I moved back into the house within a week. I switched to night shifts so I could drive Mom to chemotherapy during the day. Doctor appointments, medication schedules, radiation sessions, vomiting at 3 in the morning. The quiet humiliation of helping your own mother shower because she's too weak to stand alone. Cancer strips dignity slowly, and love means staying anyway. My paycheck dropped almost 30% after changing shifts. I never complained because this was my mother. Meanwhile, Grant visited 3 times in 2 years, 3, each visit lasted less than an hour. He'd arrive wearing expensive coats and polished shoes, smelling faintly like cologne and luxury car leather. Kiss Mom's forehead, check his watch, leave. Vanessa came once and spent most of the visit taking aesthetic photos of Mom's garden for Instagram. I wish that sentence were exaggerated. It isn't. Dad never thanked me for any of it, not once. Because in his mind, this was simply what daughters were supposed to do, but Mom noticed everything. That's what mattered. About once a month, she asked me to drive her to Hartford. "There's paperwork I need to handle," she'd say vaguely. "Insurance documents, legal things, boring adult responsibilities." I'd wait in the car while she met with a lawyer named Evelyn Hart. Every single time, Mom came back looking lighter somehow, like she'd quietly placed another brick into something invisible. One night after chemo, while I helped her into bed, she grabbed my wrist suddenly. Her hands were trembling badly from treatment. "You showed up," she whispered. "What? When it mattered." Tears filled her eyes instantly. And suddenly mine did too. "Mom, no, listen to me." Her voice shook. "Whatever happens later, remember that." At the time, I thought she was talking about cancer. I didn't realize she was talking about the future, about inheritance, about betrayal, about the moment my brother would throw me out of my own home while my mother's lavender still bloomed in the backyard. And the worst part, deep down, I think she already knew he would. The night Mom died, it snowed. Not heavily, just enough to cover the backyard lavender garden in soft white frost by morning. I remember standing beside her hospital bed at 2:14 a.m. listening to the machines breathe louder than she could. Dad sat in the corner staring at the television without really watching it. Grant wasn't there, neither was Vanessa. They said they'd come in the morning. Mom knew they wouldn't make it in time. I think we both knew. Her fingers felt cold in mine. Fragile, smaller than I remembered from childhood. And yet somehow she still squeezed my hand like she was trying to comfort me instead. "Brielle," she whispered weakly. I leaned closer immediately. "I'm here." Her eyes moved toward Dad sleeping in the chair, then back to me. "There's a letter." My chest tightened instantly. "What letter?" "In my gardening box," she whispered. "For later." I nodded even though I didn't understand. Tears slid quietly into her hairline while I tried not to fall apart in front of her. "You were never hard to love," she whispered suddenly. That sentence destroyed me. Because children from families like mine grow up believing affection must be earned through usefulness, achievement, service, silence, and hearing my mother say otherwise after 32 years felt almost unbearable. "I love you, Mom, I know." Those were the last clear words she ever spoke. She passed away 30 minutes later while snow collected softly against the hospital windows, and somehow the world just kept moving afterward. People always say time stops when someone dies. It doesn't, that's the cruelest part. The next 4 days blurred together painfully: funeral planning, phone calls, flowers, casseroles from neighbors. Endless conversations with people saying she's in a better place while I nodded politely because grief makes you too tired to argue. Grant handled the funeral like a business event. Perfect suit, perfect speech, perfect public grieving. During his eulogy, he spoke about Dad's strength for nearly 10 minutes. He mentioned Mom twice. I remember sitting there staring at the church floor thinking, you didn't know her at all. After the burial, people gathered in the reception hall sharing stories about Mom, her lavender cookies, her kindness, the way she remembered birthdays. Meanwhile, Grant stood near the back discussing property taxes with one of Dad's old friends. Property taxes, less than an hour after burying her. That's when I realized something terrible. My brother wasn't grieving, he was transitioning ownership. And later that evening, he proved it. After everyone left, I returned home exhausted beyond words, emotionally hollow. The kind of exhaustion that settles into your bones. I parked beside the curb and immediately noticed something wrong. The porch light was off. Strange. Mom always left it on. Then I saw the boxes stacked beside the garage. My boxes, and suddenly everything after that happened exactly the way nightmares do. Too fast, too cold, too unreal to process properly. Grant standing on the porch, Vanessa holding wine, the new locks, the rain soaking through my belongings while he calmly explained why daughters don't inherit. I barely slept that night. After Grant finally went back inside, I sat in my car until nearly midnight staring at the house through blurred tears. The same house where I learned multiplication at the kitchen table, where Mom braided my hair before school, where I spent 2 years helping her survive cancer, and now I wasn't even allowed inside. At some point, I remembered the letter, the gardening box. My hands shook while I searched through the wet cardboard boxes near the garage wall. Most things were ruined, books warped from rainwater, photo frames cracked, clothes soaked. Then finally, inside a small floral gardening tin beneath seed packets and pruning gloves, I found it. A cream-colored envelope with my name written in Mom's handwriting. For Brielle, when the time comes. I couldn't open it there, not while sitting in the rain outside my childhood home like discarded furniture. So I drove to the only person I trusted completely, Naomi Bennett, head nurse at Brookside, my closest friend for 6 years. She opened the apartment door still wearing pajamas and took one look at my face before pulling me into a hug. No questions, no hesitation, just come inside. Sometimes the people who save you aren't family at all. An hour later, sitting at Naomi's kitchen table wrapped in a blanket with untouched tea growing cold beside me, I finally opened Mom's letter. And the first sentence made my heart stop. "My darling Brielle, if you are reading this, then your brother has already shown you exactly who he chose to become." I read the sentence 3 times before my brain fully processed it. Naomi sat quietly across from me pretending to scroll through her phone while giving me privacy, but I could feel her watching me carefully, ready to catch me if I shattered. My hands trembled harder the further I read. "I saw it coming, sweetheart. Your father taught Grant that being born a son made him entitled to more love, more patience, more forgiveness, more everything. I tried to fight it quietly for years. I'm sorry I didn't fight louder." Tears blurred the page instantly, because children raised in homes like mine don't expect accountability from parents, even loving parents, especially loving mothers who spent decades surviving instead of confronting. And yet here she was apologizing to me from beyond the grave. "If Grant has forced you out, contact Evelyn Hart immediately. Do not sign anything. Do not agree to anything. And whatever happens next, remember this. I prepared for you long before anyone realized I needed to." My chest tightened painfully. Prepared for me? What did that even mean? At the bottom of the letter sat a phone number written carefully in blue ink: Evelyn Hart. The lawyer Mom visited every month. The same mysterious paperwork appointments I never questioned properly. Naomi finally spoke softly. "What is it?" I looked up slowly. "I think my mother knew this would happen." Naomi's expression darkened immediately. "She knew your brother would throw you out?" I nodded once. And honestly, saying it out loud made something inside me break permanently. Because what kind of mother has to secretly prepare legal protection for one child against the other? The answer, apparently, was mine. The next morning, I called Evelyn Hart's office. The receptionist transferred me immediately the second I gave my name, almost like they'd been expecting my call. "Miss Mercer," Evelyn said warmly, "I'm very sorry for your loss." Her voice sounded calm, controlled. The voice of someone already holding answers. "She left me a letter." "I know," that startled me. Evelyn paused gently. "Your mother instructed me to help you when the time came." The time came. Like all of this had been building quietly for years beneath the surface, while I blindly believed we were just a dysfunctional family instead of a carefully managed disaster. Evelyn scheduled me for Thursday afternoon. "Bring nothing except yourself," she said before hanging up. Thursday arrived gray and freezing. Naomi insisted on driving me downtown herself. "You look like you're heading to court for murder," she muttered while handing me coffee. "I feel like I might vomit." "Good, that means your instincts still work." Harrison and Hart occupied the top floor of an old Hartford building with dark wood walls and polished brass elevators. The kind of office wealthy people use when they want problems handled quietly. I suddenly felt painfully underdressed in my nursing clothes. Evelyn Hart greeted me personally in the lobby. Late 50s, elegant silver hair, sharp navy suit, kind eyes, the kind of woman who probably noticed everything immediately. "Brielle," she said softly, "my God, you look exactly like your mother." That nearly made me cry on the spot. She led me into a private office overlooking downtown Hartford and closed the door carefully behind us. Then she folded her hands. "Your mother spent 8 years preparing for this moment." There it was again, 8 years. The exact phrase from Mom's letter. "What does that mean?" I whispered. Evelyn studied me carefully before answering. "It means your mother understood your father and brother better than they understood themselves." Something cold settled into my stomach. She knew Grant would try taking everything. "Yes." The answer came instantly, no hesitation, no uncertainty, just yes. I stared at the floor trying to breathe normally. "And she planned around it." Evelyn opened a thick folder slowly. Official documents filled with signatures, seals, and legal tabs. But before she could explain further, my phone started vibrating violently across the desk. Grant. Of course, 5 missed calls already. Then a text appeared: "I'm trying to help you before the will reading embarrasses you." A second message followed immediately. "Dad left you almost nothing. Take the offer while you still can. Offer." Before I could respond, another text arrived. $15,000 cash if you sign papers agreeing not to contest the estate. I stared at the screen in disbelief. $15,000. That's what my entire existence was apparently worth to my brother. Evelyn looked at the phone calmly. "Do not answer him." I swallowed hard. "He says Dad left me almost nothing." Evelyn's expression didn't change. "Your father did leave you very little." The words hit painfully even though I expected them. Then she leaned forward slightly. "But your mother," she said quietly, "is an entirely different story." And suddenly, for the first time since Mom died, I felt something other than grief. I felt fear, because whatever my mother secretly built over 8 years was big enough to terrify my brother before the will was even read. The formal will reading was scheduled for Thursday at 2 p.m. Exactly 1 week after my mother's funeral, and somehow that entire week felt unreal. Grant kept calling, texting, threatening, then suddenly pretending to be kind again whenever threats didn't work. Classic panic behavior. By Wednesday night, his messages became almost desperate. "You're being manipulated. Dad wanted fairness. Lawyers are twisting things." Interesting, because men only start talking about fairness when they realize they might lose power. I ignored every message, exactly like Evelyn instructed. Thursday afternoon arrived cold and overcast. Naomi hugged me tightly outside Harrison and Hart before I went upstairs. "Breathe," she whispered. "I'll try." "No," she corrected gently. "You'll survive." That sentence stayed with me because survival was something women in my family understood intimately. The conference room looked exactly how wealthy legal offices always look in movies. Mahogany table, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, soft lighting designed to calm people receiving life-changing news. Only 6 people sat inside when I entered. Grant, Vanessa, Evelyn Hart, her assistant, my grandmother Alina, and one empty chair waiting for me. Grant looked genuinely shocked when Grandma Alina stood and hugged me immediately. "You came," I whispered. "Of course I did." Her voice held steel beneath softness. Grant recovered quickly. "Well," he said with forced confidence, "let's get this over with." Interesting, because he still believed today belonged to him. Vanessa sat beside him wearing cream designer clothing and the expression of someone already mentally spending inheritance money. Evelyn waited until everyone sat down before opening the first folder. "We will begin with Robert Mercer's will, Dad's will." The room immediately felt colder somehow. Grant leaned back confidently, one arm draped across his chair. Relaxed, certain. Evelyn read through the opening legal language carefully before reaching the asset distribution. "To my son, Grant Mercer, I leave 70% of all remaining liquid assets, business holdings, investment accounts, and personal property." Grant nodded slowly. There it was, validation, proof. Everything Dad taught him about sons inheriting the world suddenly confirmed officially on paper. Then, "To my daughter, Brielle Mercer, I leave 30% of remaining liquid assets." Grant smirked immediately. Vanessa almost smiled. I felt strangely numb, not surprised, just tired. Dad's final message was exactly the same as every message before it. Grant mattered more. Evelyn continued reading financial estimates calmly. "After taxes, debts, and probate costs, my portion totaled roughly $28,000. That was it. $28,000 after sacrificing 2 years of my life caring for dying parents." Grant folded his hands together smugly. "Well," he said lightly, "at least Dad remembered you." Grandma Alina's eyes narrowed sharply, but before anyone could respond, Evelyn closed Dad's file completely, then opened another, thicker, heavier, and suddenly the room changed. "Now," she said calmly, "we address Linda Mercer's estate." Grant frowned immediately. "What estate?" "Your mother's." "Mom didn't have a separate estate." Evelyn looked directly at him. "Yes," she said quietly, "she did." The confidence disappeared from Grant's face for the first time all afternoon. Vanessa straightened beside him. "What exactly does that mean?" Evelyn folded her hands neatly. "It means your mother spent 8 years establishing independent legal protections outside your father's estate." Silence, complete silence. I could actually hear the ticking wall clock behind me. Grant laughed once nervously. "That doesn't make sense." "It makes perfect legal sense." Then Evelyn pulled out a sealed envelope. "Before we continue," she said calmly, "your mother requested a personal letter be read aloud to both her children." My chest tightened instantly. Grant looked irritated already, like even hearing Mom's words felt inconvenient. Evelyn unfolded the letter slowly, then began reading. "To my children, if you are hearing this letter, then I am gone, and the moment I feared most has finally arrived." The room went perfectly still. Grant's posture shifted slightly, and suddenly, for the very first time since Mom died, my brother looked nervous. Evelyn's voice stayed calm and steady as she continued reading my mother's letter aloud. "For 34 years, I watched this family teach my daughter that love must be earned through sacrifice, while my son received it freely simply for existing." Grant shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Vanessa stopped checking her phone entirely now. And Grandma Alina, she sat beside me perfectly still, like she'd already lived through this moment emotionally years ago. I kept my eyes lowered toward the table because hearing Mom defend me publicly felt almost too painful to absorb, especially after a lifetime of silence. When Brielle was accepted into nursing school, she paid for it herself. When Grant wanted investment capital, his father opened doors for him immediately. Grant scoffed quietly. "Oh my God." Evelyn ignored him completely. "When I became sick, my daughter rearranged her life without hesitation. She cleaned me, fed me, sat beside hospital beds, and held my hand through fear she was too kind to show. My son visited when convenient." Grant's face darkened instantly. "That's unfair." "No," Grandma Alina said sharply. "It's accurate. The room went silent again, because deep down, everyone knew she was right. Evelyn continued reading. I do not write this letter to punish my son. I write it because protection and punishment are not the same thing. Something about that sentence made my throat tighten painfully. Protection and punishment are not the same thing. Mom wasn't trying to destroy Grant. She was trying to save me from him. If Grant feels shocked by my decisions, I ask him one question. What exactly did he believe Brielle deserved after everything she gave this family? Grant stared down at the table now, not angry anymore, unsteady. Like the foundation beneath his identity had begun cracking. Then Evelyn carefully set the letter aside. And now, she said calmly, we discuss Linda Mercer's independent assets. Grant straightened immediately again. Defensive instinct returning. My mother didn't have millions hidden somewhere. No, Evelyn replied smoothly. She built them openly, you simply never paid attention. That landed beautifully. Quiet, precise, deadly. Evelyn pulled out the first document. 5 years ago, your parents transferred ownership of the Mercer family home solely into Linda Mercer's name. Grant blinked hard. What? The transfer occurred during a business liability concern involving your father's contracting company. She slid the deed across the table. Official. Stamped. Recorded. The Hartford property, the same house Grant threw me out of, legally belonged to Mom alone for the last 5 years. And Mom left it entirely to me. Grant grabbed the document so fast the papers bent in his hands. No. Dad would never. Your father signed it himself, Evelyn interrupted calmly. Vanessa looked genuinely panicked now. That house is worth almost $700,000. Evelyn nodded once. Approximately. Grant looked physically ill. But Evelyn wasn't finished. There is also the matter of the irrevocable trust. My pulse quickened instantly. There it was. The thing Mom secretly spent 8 years building. Grant laughed nervously again. What trust? 8 years ago, Evelyn continued, Linda Mercer established an irrevocable investment trust with Brielle Mercer as sole beneficiary. The room froze. Even the air felt different suddenly. Grant stared blankly. Sole beneficiary? Yes. With initial funding provided legally through Eleanor Whitmore. Grandma Eleanor lifted her chin slightly. I gave my daughter money that belonged to me. Grant looked between us wildly now. How much? Evelyn checked the paperwork. The current trust value is approximately $1.4 million. Vanessa gasped loudly, actually gasped, and suddenly every strange comment I overheard over the years made sense. Their desperation, their obsession with inheritance, the pressure. Grant and Vanessa weren't wealthy. They were drowning while pretending not to be. This is insane, Grant whispered. Evelyn continued anyway. There is also a Northwestern Mutual life insurance policy valued at $500,000 naming Brielle Mercer as sole beneficiary. Grant went completely pale. The total inheritance now sat above $2 million. My mother, who wore old sweaters and clipped grocery coupons, quietly built me a future while I believed I'd spend my life barely surviving. I couldn't even process the number emotionally. Then Grant suddenly stood up so quickly his chair crashed backward. This is fraud. No, Evelyn replied calmly. This is planning. You manipulated her. No, Grandma Eleanor said quietly. Your mother finally protected her daughter. Grant looked at me then, really looked at me. And for the first time in our entire lives, I think my brother realized I was no longer beneath him. That terrified him more than losing the money ever could. Then Evelyn delivered the final blow. There is also video documentation of your mother personally explaining every legal decision to prevent contesting. She placed a small USB drive onto the table. Grant stared at it silently, and suddenly his entire face lost color. For one long second, nobody spoke. Grant just stared at the USB drive sitting on the mahogany table like it might explode if he touched it. The confidence was gone now. No smugness, no superiority, just fear, real fear. Vanessa grabbed his arm tightly. This can't be legal, she whispered. Evelyn folded her hands calmly. It is extremely legal. Then she slid one final document across the table, a complete asset summary. The numbers looked unreal even to me. The Hartford house, $690,000. The irrevocable trust, $1.4 million. Life insurance policy, $500,000. additional liquid assets and personal holdings. Total estimated inheritance, $2.6 million. I stopped breathing for a second. Not because of greed, because my mother spent 8 years secretly building safety for me while I believed I was completely alone. Grant looked like he might faint. "No," he whispered. "No, Dad promised me everything." Grandma Aliner's voice turned cold beside me. "Your father promised things that were never his to give." That sentence shattered something inside the room, because suddenly the entire Mercer family mythology collapsed at once. The son wasn't chosen by destiny. He was simply protected by assumption. And my mother, she spent years quietly undoing that damage without anyone noticing. Grant stood abruptly. "This is manipulation." "No," I said softly before anyone else could answer. "This is the first time anyone protected me." The room went silent again. Grant stared at me in disbelief, almost offended I'd spoken at all. "Brielle," he snapped, "you cannot seriously think this is fair." Fair? Interesting word from the man who threw his sister into the rain 3 days after their mother's funeral. "You changed the locks on me. You were living there temporarily. I lived there caring for Mom while you visited 3 times. His face hardened instantly. "I was building a business." "No," Grandma Aliner interrupted sharply. "You were building debt." That landed like a gunshot. Vanessa froze completely. Grant turned toward Grandma slowly. "What?" Grandma looked exhausted suddenly, older but still sharp enough to cut glass. "Your mother knew about the investment losses, the loans, the second mortgage on the Greenwich house." Vanessa's face drained white, and suddenly every cruel comment they ever made about money made sense. They weren't rich. They were pretending. Grant looked furious now. "You had no right digging into my finances." "When you planned using your mother's death to save yourself?" Grandma asked quietly. "Yes, we did." The silence afterward felt unbearable. Because underneath the expensive watches and designer coats, my brother was drowning financially. And he fully expected my parents' deaths to rescue him. That's why he panicked. That's why he threw me out immediately. That's why he tried bribing me before the will reading. Not arrogance, desperation. Grant sat down heavily, then suddenly laughed once. Broken, humiliated. "So what now?" he muttered. "She gets everything and I get punished?" Evelyn answered before anyone else could. "Your mother did not punish you, Mr. Mercer." She glanced toward me gently. "She corrected an imbalance." That sentence nearly made me cry. Because my entire life I thought wanting equal love made me selfish. Then Grant looked at me again, and for the first time since childhood he sounded small. "Brielle, we're still family." Family. Interesting how people suddenly remember family when they need saving. I thought about the rain-soaked boxes, my ruined diploma, Mom's blanket still folded on the armchair while he locked me outside. And somehow I didn't feel angry anymore, just clear. "I'm not going to destroy you," I said quietly. Relief flashed across his face instantly, then I continued. "But I'm also not saving you from consequences you created while treating me like I mattered less." His face fell immediately. Vanessa looked ready to cry now. Honestly, part of me pitied them, not because they deserved rescue. Because entitlement destroys people slowly from the inside until they genuinely believe love and money belong to them automatically. Before leaving, Grandma Aliner stopped me in the hallway outside the conference room. "I have something for you." She opened a small velvet jewelry box carefully. Inside sat Mom's sapphire ring, the one she wore almost every single day. I covered my mouth instantly. "She wanted you to have it," Grandma whispered. My hands shook while sliding it onto my finger. Perfect fit. Like Mom still knew exactly where I belonged. 6 months later, I enrolled in a nurse practitioner program I could finally afford. I kept working at Brookside. I rented out the Hartford house temporarily because I wasn't emotionally ready to live there again yet. And every Sunday, Grandma Aliner and I planted fresh lavender together in the garden Mom loved most. Grant and Vanessa eventually sold their Greenwich house after foreclosure pressure became impossible to hide. We barely speak now, and honestly, some distance is healthier than forced forgiveness. But sometimes late at night, I still think about Mom secretly meeting lawyers for 8 years while pretending it was insurance paperwork. Quietly building freedom for me piece by piece, not because she loved Grant less. Because she finally understood I deserved protection too. If this story meant something to you, don't forget to like and subscribe for more emotional family drama stories. And tell me honestly in the comments, would you have helped your brother after everything he did, or walked away forever?